Welcome to the Bournecast, a special rewatch miniseries from Least Important Things in which we assess and uncover the legacy of the Bourne franchise. With me, as always, is my friend and asset, Mike Wynn. Welcome, Mike.
Yes. Reporting for duty.
Yes. If that was actually in the movie where they call up the assets, they just text back, reporting for duty, sir.
Yes.
Mike, we're here. We're a new franchise. How are you feeling?
Despite my best efforts to hold this one off.
You knew we were going back to the spy genre. If you've never listened to us before, welcome. Where have you been? This is Least Important Things. We've covered a bunch of franchises. Jurassic Pod, where we covered Jurassic Park. Podcast Impossible, where we covered Mission Impossible. And most recently, Podcast of the Caribbean, where we covered the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. And we are returning to this genre that we love, the spy action genre, with the Bournecast, covering the Bourne films. You can listen to all those previous episodes here on the feed, Least Important Things, or on our YouTube channel. Just search Least Important Things. Mike, our listeners asked for this franchise, so you knew it was coming, and we just couldn't resist.
No, so we got to give the people what they want.
We have to. And over the next couple months, we are going to rewatch and discuss all 5 of the films. Yes, there's 5 films in this franchise. So please join us. If you've never listened to any of our stuff, welcome. If you're a longtime listener, welcome back, and let's get into it. Now, Mike, we did not intentionally do this, but literally the week we're recording this, so not 48 hours ago, it was announced that there's actually going to be a new Bourne installment coming called The Bourne Dilemma. And Matt Damon is likely to return.
Yeah, I feel like our audience is past believing us on this point. It's obvious we have insider information on what's going on in Hollywood. And we are the kingmaker.
We are. I would love to. You know how there's the NFL insider, NBA insider, such a big deal in sports media? I just would love for us to just be franchise insiders, Mike Wynn and Luke Ferris. Right. But it is kind of crazy because we started Jurassic Pod knowing there was going to be a new Jurassic movie. Obviously, Podcast Impossible, we knew there was going to be new Mission Impossible installments. But when we started Podcast of the Caribbean, as we started that, there was news of a new movie or rumors of a new movie coming out or a reboot of the franchise. And now here with Bourne, as soon as we start recording, there's a potential new movie. So we've really set ourselves up to have all these podcasts continue to go in perpetuity as they continue to have movies come out.
My message to the fans regarding this is, what franchise are you looking for a new movie in? And you should tell Luke and I that that's the next franchise.
Just start covering it, and there's going to be a greenlit movie. It's going to happen. I did get a lot of feedback. We did a promo announcing that we were going to do the Bournecast, and Mike, in his comedic spirit, tried to trick our audience into thinking we were covering Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, and I got multiple comments saying, "Don't tease us with that." So maybe folks who want a new Sisterhood movie, maybe that's what we'll cover next. So let us know. You can contact us, leastimportantthings.com, Instagram, Luke H. Ferris, or TikTok, Least Important Things. Email the show, leastimportantthings@gmail.com.
My nieces and nephews are looking for us to do a Bluey rewatch so that we could
Bluey does not need our help. Bluey does not. That empire is only growing.
I'm also submitting an early request for us to do a Land Before Time rewatch.
I cannot keep track of those plots. You thought Pirates of the Caribbean was tough to keep track of? Oh, the Land Before Time franchise. No way. Okay, Mike, we are covering the first film in the franchise today, The Bourne Identity. But before we get into this film, let's talk about your franchise views overall. What's your journey with this franchise? How's your walk with Bond or Bourne going? How's your journey with Bourne? Where do you stand on this franchise?
I stand opposed. Not and I'm being
Here we go, friends. We knew this was coming.
I'm presenting more of an affront than there really is. So I just have a passive indifference toward this franchise. I did not see the first 2 movies when they came out, despite their popularity, and despite my age demographic being like perfectly situated to to capitalize on that. And I did end up going to see the third movie in theaters, and
Without seeing the first two?
Without seeing the first two. And I went with like my youth group, my church group.
Okay.
And so like we like went as a group, and I had a really bad experience in the theater. I sat
in the cam.
I sat in the third row, and
take some Dramamine.
The shaky cam, which we'll get to when we get further on in the franchise, and and then when they released like the fourth movie, Bourne Legacy, I was just so far removed of the franchise, I had no care, and especially that they were changing the lead. So my wife and her family are huge fans of the series. So
Shannon, friend of the pod.
Yeah, I've seen
partner of Mike. Mike's partner. That's an insider joke for Andy's partner, who we hope is listening. Andy, friend of the show.
And Andy's partner, friend of the show.
Andy's partner.
They are great. I have since seen all the movies now. I just, did
good. You watch them with Shannon's family? Was it kind of like, okay, Mike, let's sit down. It's Christmas Eve. We gotta watch these movies.
Yeah, kind of. And like her dad and mom, well, really her whole family, they're just big fans of the franchise. It was like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and the Bourne franchise for them.
Because they're great humans, and that's all you need to know.
Yep. So that's kind of my background with the franchise. I have a passive indifference. I could take it or leave it. If these movies never existed, it would have very little impact on me personally.
That's so true, and I didn't know, but that's what I suspected what would happen. I think it's like a lot of movies or franchises. If you didn't watch them when they're coming out or didn't see them at a certain age, I think it really affects the experience. I had the inverse. I saw these at the prime age. I didn't see the first two in theaters, but I saw them. It's that perfect 10 to 15-year-old boy age when these movies were coming out, and they changed my life. Like I'd never seen anything like that. And we're both big fans of the Bond franchise, and I'm sure I will mess up the Bond porn as we go through the series. But I remember just watching these, and I believe I watched this movie the first time, and maybe Justin could help us, but friend of the show, Justin Felton, we watched it, I think, at his house in his basement, because I remember the final scene and like closing my eyes at some point in the final fight scene. So I think it was the first time I watched it, but as soon as these movies were available on DVD, I just was consumed, watched them with my cousins. It was like on constant repeat. And then I went to see the third movie in theaters, and I remember just feeling so much hype for it. So it was definitely this era of growing up where I just loved this franchise more than anything, and it was really important to me. And you'll hear that throughout all these movies and talking about these movies as I'm going to gush over them. So, but I think it's interesting. It's nice to have someone with a different perspective who doesn't have the nostalgic connection to it. So, but Mike, let's strap in. Typically, we're going to change some things up here. Typically, we share some background info on the movie and then go beat by beat through the plot, and then we rate the movie. That's kind of the structure of our show. We like to keep it loosey-goosey. We like to keep it fun. Lovers, not experts, to take from the James Bondine podcast. However, if you listen to the podcast of the Caribbean, my soul was broken. My body was broken trying to follow the plot beat by beat of those films. And I don't want you, the listener, to be pulled into my confusion of which Jack, how is Jack Sparrow getting to there? What ship is that doing that? And what MacGuffin is important and not important. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some new segments to the show. We'll still cover the whole movie. We'll add stuff, but it's going to be a little bit more structured. And much like the Bourne franchise, much like this movie, it's going to be tight. We want it to be tight and lean. We're still going to go long. We're still going to meander. We're still going to go on rabbit trails, but it's going to be a little bit more structured so you feel like you don't have to go through the entire plot of the movie. Does that sound good, Mike?
Sounds great.
I'm forcing Mike to do it so I don't have to write the entire plot down every single time. And I would say that this plot is much easier to follow than Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest.
For sure.
All right, the first segment of the show. It was a new one in our last franchise. It's Mike's Nap Check-In. Mike's Nap Check-In, where we check in to see when did Mike fall asleep while watching this movie. Mike, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I did fall asleep while watching this movie. I started watching the movie around 8 o'clock, 8:30.
Yeah, that's pretty late.
Finished,
pretty late.
I had just finished watching something previously. I
was a double feature.
Just finished watching the Mr. McMahon documentary on Netflix.
Okay.
Which is fascinating. Anyway, so we started watching this movie, and at about 9:30, I fell asleep for 8 hours. And then the next night we picked up where we left off. No, I didn't actually take a nap during the movie. We broke it up into 2 nights, but I actually did not fall asleep during the actual viewing.
So this is a Mike's Nap Check-In first of the segment where Mike strategically broke it up so he wouldn't fall asleep and miss the second half of the movie. That's called progress, my friend. All right, next segment is a new segment. Since we're not going beat by beat of the plot, we're hoping you watched this movie already. And if you haven't, hopefully you've watched it before. And if you haven't at all and are just listening for ASMR to fall asleep, great. We love that too. But I'm going to do a back of the VHS description. Mike, remember, let's go back to like 2004, 2005. It's a Friday night. You're hanging out with your friends.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? It's February. We can't go. There's no movies out in the theaters. There's nothing to do outside. What are we going to do? Let's go to Blockbuster. Let's just go to this place called Blockbuster or Family Video, and let's just meander through.
Or if you grew up where I grew up, you went to the independent video store. We had an independent video rental store.
Grosse Pointe had an indie video store, home of Grosse Pointe Blank. Was it just all Grosse Pointe Blank at the front? Like I feel like that's like there was an aisle. It was just all editions of that movie. So you get the VHS, you get the Blu-ray.
Maybe it wasn't
DVD.
Independent, but it was called Mammoth Video.
Oh yes, Mammoth. That's a local. I think that's a mid-Michigan, east side Michigan chain, because there was a Mammoth in Lansing where my cousins lived.
Yeah. I'm looking it up on Google now. Like obviously they're all gone, right? But we had a Mammoth.
The Mammoths are not gone, and the Mammoths have been extinct, and the Mammoth videos are extinct.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was a local, like
it must have been just a mid-Michigan,
Southeast Michigan thing.
But even that, so just picture you're at Mammoth Video, you're at Blockbuster, you're at Family Video. You're just going through the aisles. You're checking out the different movies. All the new releases have already been rented because it's Friday night and all the dads came home and rented the new movies. So you don't have a lot of options. So you're just going through the aisles. And what do? You just pick a VHS or a DVD off the shelf. You look at the cover and you turn it around. You turn it around and some incredible marketing person at Warner Brothers or another studio has written a little blurb about the movie to give you a little flavor, a taste of what's to come. That's the back of the VHS description.
Yeah, so this is essentially for those who are familiar with streaming services. When you would
I don't know what those are.
Oh, okay. So when you would scroll through your streaming service and then you would just land your cursor onto a tile for 3 to 5 seconds, and then a preview would immediately begin. This is the grandfather to that.
It is. You're so right. So imagine a moving picture when I describe these words. Now, I actually have the Bourne Identity DVD in my hand. If you're watching on YouTube, I picked up all 3 of the first 3 movies on Blu-ray for $9.99. Great deal. So I'm going to read the actual back of the one. We might not have this for every episode, but moving forward. But I'm going to actually read this one. Okay, here we go. Perfect picture. Oh, okay, no, we don't want that. Okay. Racing to unlock the secret of his own identity, amnesiac operative Jason Bourne discovers the deadly truth. He's the government's #1 target, a $30 million weapon it no longer trusts. Academy Award winner Matt Damon stars in this supercharged, thrill-a-minute spectacular loaded with non-stop action. The Bourne Identity.
That's one that you hold on to and then continue looking. You hold on to that one.
It's one you definitely hold on to, and you kind of go throughout the aisles.
Yep.
And you definitely are going to want to watch this movie on a Friday night. Okay, Mike, just to give us a little context about the franchise, this is not on the back of the DVD. This franchise was based on a popular book series by Robert Ludlum. The first book was released in 1980, and the last one, I believe, was 1991. Unfortunately, he died during the filming of this movie, and the series actually still continues. It's been taken over by other authors. I'm actually reading that book for the first time. I've read another book that wasn't written by him, and just as a FYI, if you're reading the book, the movie is nothing like the book. They intentionally decided not to do really anything related to the books. The only thing that you can connect is the opening of the movie. Basically what I just read is the only thing that is connected. Actually, the character is older in the books. It's much more tied to the Cold War. I've enjoyed it, but it's very different than the movie. But a very popular book series, and basically Hollywood had this book series, and they've been wanting to adapt this for a long, long time. There is actually a 1988 TV miniseries that is much closer to the book that I found. I did not know this.
Did you watch it?
That you can watch. I watched some of it, but it seems to follow the book much more closely, just like scanning through it. So maybe we'll cover it, maybe we won't. But if you want to, I think it's all on YouTube. So, all right, Mike, let's move into some production info about this movie. The Bourne Identity was released on June 6, 2002. Mike, do you want to take a guess what you could have seen that weekend in the theater?
June 6, 2002. I already know.
What did young Mike win? What could he have seen in the theaters?
There's a Star Wars movie out that time, right?
You're right. Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, is out.
Okay. It's going to be hard to believe. So you're talking opening weekend for these movies, or just what was in theaters?
It's June 6th. You can go see Bourne. What movies have come out in the past month and a half?
Got it. Yeah, so Star Wars movie, June 6, 2002. Was there wouldn't have been a Mission Impossible out, would there?
No Mission Impossible.
Okay.
That Mission Impossible that was the gap. Yeah, we had a big gap because 3 wasn't until 2006, I believe, or 2006.
Was there a Jurassic Park?
No, but we did mention this franchise earlier.
Alias. Oh, sorry.
When we were talking about sequels.
Oh, really? What? I don't know. I can't.
Spider-Man. The first Spider-Man was out. Yes.
The first
you have Spider-Man. The Sum of All Fears was a Jack Ryan, Tom Clancy joint. In Insomnia, Christopher Nolan film. All those films were out.
Now, was Insomnia actually in theaters?
That might have not been, but that was released in, I believe, May of 2002.
Gotcha.
So that's a pretty solid year for movies. Wow.
I'd say.
I like all those movies. This film, Bourne Identity, was shot, of course, in Paris, mostly in Paris, but also in Prague, Imperia, which is in Italy, Rome, Mykonos, which is in Greece, and Zurich. It's directed by Doug Liman, who did Swingers and Go. And he's done a ton of stuff since, but that is what he had done previously. So kind of this up-and-coming indie director. He did Mr. and Mrs. Smith after this, part of the OC, Edge of Tomorrow, which I know you love that movie, American Made, so 2 Tom Cruise movies, and the new Roadhouse most recently. It was written by Tony Gilroy, who did Armageddon, The Devil's Advocate, and you would know him later to be part of Rogue One, and he's the showrunner of Andor. And then William Blake Herron also helped.
He's the showrunner for Andor?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So he helped with this script. Again, totally new script. Like they essentially, Doug Liman got a lot of control over this movie, surprisingly, when you do the research. and kind of tasked them to write an original story. So we have the basic idea of the book, but then write it in a totally original story. Cinematography by Oliver Wood, who had previously did U-571, Face Off, Mr. Holland's Opus, Rudy, Die Hard 2, a lot of stuff since. Editing by Sar Klein, did Almost Famous. I'm including editing because I think that's going to come in the next two sequels. Stunt coordinating by Nick Powell, who was a part of Gladiator, Braveheart, and The Mummy, and then executive produced by legendary Frank Marshall, who was connected to probably all of your favorite movies, Spielberg, Lucas. All right, the lineup here, starring Matt Damon as Jason Bourne, Frank Potenti as Marie. She was in Run Lola Run, which is like a German thriller experimental film. And that was the reason why she was cast. The director, he said specifically he wanted somebody that had star power in Europe, but maybe wasn't necessarily known in America. Chris Cooper as Conklin, Clive Owen, the Professor, Brian Cox as Ward Abbott. And then we have, I'm going to butcher his name, by Adewale Ikenoye Ajabi, who played Wimbosi. He's done a ton of stuff. Gabriel Mann as Zorn, Walter Goggins as a research tech, Josh Hamilton as a research tech, and then Julie Stiles as Nikki. Just a murderer's row of character actors, just incredible. It's a beautiful, beautiful group of people. Absolutely love them. All right, ready for some facts that you can fact check yourself? I'm not going to do the work for you. Matt Damon did most of his own stunts and said that climbing down the bank building was one of the craziest things he's ever done. Which is really impressive. Before people don't realize before this, he wasn't really a action star. He wasn't associated with action movies. So this was like a big change in him as a star. It's hard to remember before this. Matt Damon was an up-and-coming kind of Hollywood darling, but he didn't have his own franchise. So this was a really big movie for him. And he took it very seriously.
That scene where he's climbing on the side of the mountain, a lot of people would probably watch that and go, that's too fantastical to be real. But I think what we've learned from the Mission Impossible franchise is that a lot of these kind of fantastical looking rock climbing scenes are actually practically done. And rock climbing experts have even looked at that and been like, yeah, those are all legitimate, like real moves that are done. So
now it helps that the building has little grips in them.
True.
Just help them down. It does help, but it's a pretty cool stunt just seeing that. And I think it's aged really well. This is going to be you mentioned your first time seeing a Bourne movie in the theaters. This is the beginning of this. The style of these movies that has kind of that influenced an era. Doug Liman wanted the camera operator to be late moving on the camera, meaning if I'm shooting Mike right now for those watching on YouTube, and Mike moved, and I wouldn't know where he's going, so I'd have to follow him. Whereas traditional movies, I would know exactly where Mike was moving. If we were making a film, I would know Mike is going to move one step to the right, and I'm going to follow him so you don't feel jolted as a viewer. Yeah, can't see me. But in this movie, he wanted it to feel very grounded, like you were actually there. So that's why you start to see some of that quote-unquote shaky cam that kind of becomes iconic and connected to this series, because he wanted the audience to feel on edge. So he didn't let the camera operators rehearse. That way they didn't really know what was happening, which character was speaking, where they were going. The red bag that Bourne uses in the consulate is now owned by Adam Savage of Mythbusters fames, and it contains a bunch of props. It's one of my favorite, like, if I could own a prop, that would be the prop. Also, there's something about the Swiss, they really have nice garbage bags. I mean, that is a sturdy garbage bag. It's very nice. Brad Pitt was offered the role of Jason Bourne, but turned it down to do Spy Game, which came out in 2001. Spy Game, we might need to cover it. I actually like that movie, but I think it's
that decision
a pretty
did not
divisive
age very
movie.
well. Yeah.
No, it didn't. The Filipino style of martial arts called Kali was primarily used throughout the film, and that's that kind of iconic tight fighting. And it does feel like something like, oh yeah, I've seen that before. But really, this movie was so instrumental in action movies. Like, you would not have John Wick if you didn't have the Bourne movies. Obviously, The Matrix came out a couple years earlier that had really innovative fighting, but it was much more fantastical. Obviously, The Matrix is a sci-fi movie. This was grounded in reality. They're fighting in apartments. It's so raw and gritty, and it's tight. And that's, I think, a real thing about this movie that's aged well. But at the time, it was just mind-blowing. Doug Liman, the director, actually based a lot of the CIA operation details on his father's memoir, Arthur Lyman, who was chief counsel in the Iran-Contra hearings in the 1980s, which is kind of a fun fact. Okay, we're moving on to a new segment that we've kind of done before, but we're going to officially title. I'm calling it OTs. The OTs, the overall thoughts of the movie for Bourne Identity. Mike's overall thoughts on the Bourne Identity.
Overall, I thought it was good. I was entertained. Like I said, I've really only seen this movie once or twice. And maybe one of those times was like disjointed. So I was entertained. I remembered 98% of everything that happened. So
that's good. That's good because I rewatched it with Audrey, and she was like, what is this movie? I don't remember any of this. I think she had more of an experience of you where maybe she had seen them on TV and then like went to the third movie in theaters.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. Shannon watched it with me as well, and she had more fun than I did, but it was good. I came away with the first movie with a better appreciation for it than maybe I went in, which I think is a win for the movie. I thought that you can definitely see that Matt Damon is a young actor here. Obviously, extremely talented, but he is not the Matt Damon that we know these days. I have my my issues with it that we'll get to when we talk later on and give out some awards.
Yes.
But overall, it was good. I think they did a pretty good job of setting up the second movie. And I think there was a good amount of like, what's the right way to say it? Like, there was a good amount of like red tape government red tape that you needed to get through.
Like, give me a Pentagon office cubicle set. Like, I'm just like, get me in there. Like,
so that was fun.
It's so good. It's so good. I'm gonna give this overall thought to Audrey, my wife, but she was like, this is just about middle management, corporate America. Like, this is an allegory for middle management. Like, everyone's just trying to cover their own ass. Like, that's essentially what this movie is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, yeah, it kind of is. Everyone's just trying to cover their ass as they like, well, who started this project? You know, it's like, of course, the higher executives have to, you know, they have to stay, like, actually like go to meetings, and then like the middle management, they're kind of in between, and then the people on, you know, boots on the ground are doing all the dirty work and getting screwed. It's just it's a really what it's all about, and I really love this movie. More so now looking back on it, I think this movie was at a critical time in movies because, and they actually talk about this because this movie was being filmed right when September 11th happened, and they recorded a alternate starting and ending in order to essentially to have a backup for post 9/11. What changes is they have a scene at the end where before, you know, spoiler, here we go, before Bourne finds Marie, where Brian Cox's character comes up to him and say, hey, like, we've been looking for you. And he essentially invites him back to work for the government. And he says, like, everything has changed now. And they had that as a backup because they weren't sure if test audiences would be interested in an action movie, a spy movie. And I think what is ironic, they ended up not using that, is this movie is not about saving the world. It's not about nuclear annihilation. there's actually not a lot of violence in this movie. It's not about a terrorist organization like the Mission Impossible movies. It's about government oversight. It's about government greed. It's about the chaos of what is right and wrong. And I think it really fits into that Bush era. I don't know if you saw this, but there's a Bush photo right behind Chris Cooper's character at one point in his office. And I felt like this movie really defines this era. And I think it being grounded is really interesting too, as a post 9/11 movie. Just I'm like, I talked about what came out in 2002, but later that year, Die Another Day was released. And that was the Bond movie. Possibly the most campy Bond of all time since like Roger Moore era. It's the antithetical opposite of this movie. And that's why this movie changed action movies. It changed this genre. Obviously, there was stuff happening in England with Guy Ritchie with his movies, but this is the first big change in American action movies where we went away from this Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, even Harrison Ford archetype, and we moved into this grounded era, grounded action, where it was about the grittiness, the realism, and less about the big hero coming in and essentially like blowing up everything with machine guns. It was tighter, it was smaller. And this movie really influenced comic book movies. Like you wouldn't have Batman Begins, I don't think, without Bourne. It definitely influenced Bond because Casino Royale essentially tried to match what the Bourne movies had done.
Yep.
So I think it's such an important movie in action movies in this genre, but also in movie history. It's really interesting to watch this movie where it's coming out after post 9/11, but it's not about these big nuclear threats. It's about government oversight, really, and them trying to clean up stuff.
Something you said, I agree with 99.9% of everything you said, and agree that the movies are noteworthy for all of those things. I have to take umbrage with a point you made saying that, and I think you're going to be willing to walk this back once I state this to you. The idea that these movies don't have that this movie does not have a lot of violence in it is such a bad take. There is so much violence in this movie.
I guess I'm thinking comparing it to Rambo or the Commando, where it's just like machine guns and going like that. That's what that type of action. Like this is more it's more realistic action where like the death, like when they're fighting in the apartment and Bourne is using those like really terrible ballpoint pens and like stabbing the guy like that.
Extremely graphic.
It is violent. Yes, you're right. I will walk this back. It is violent, but it's grounded violence. It's very different. It's not just like, unnamed rebel in the jungle that Schwarzenegger's just like mauling down with bullets. It's like one-on-one action. And
it's
that's
not
why
grotesque gore. There's not gore.
Yeah, there's not gore. Like it's different. I'm not saying it's better or worse. Like it's still violence. But I think that's where it's different and why it was so innovative. And it wasn't necessarily a Harrison Ford movie where it's like he's the president or he's Jack Ryan. He's just like a desk jockey that's in the field and trying to, which I love those movies as well. This is an actual agent just trying to figure out who he is. I also love this era of movies because there's enough tech to make it cool, but analog enough to make it interesting. So I think about one of my favorite moments of this movie that I absolutely love is when Bourne is studying the map of Paris right before the Mini Cooper chase, which wouldn't exist now.
Yeah.
But of course, he had to study the maps to be able to know where to go. It's just a small detail that like you really wouldn't have now. Also like the payphones, redialing, paper shredding, just cash in general. Like those things are still connected to this movie. And maybe it's nostalgia and, get off my lawnness. But I like that mixture where there's cell phones and stuff, but it still feels grounded and feels like it's an analog spy movie. There's no Benji, but I mean, it's still a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. We can get to it later. I think this movie could have used even fewer cast.
There's a lot of people. I think the sound design and editing still we'll talk about that later, but I think that adds to the element of groundness. Trying to think of other overall thoughts in my notes. I think the chase, which we'll talk about maybe a little bit later, the Italian Job comes right after this, with the Mini Cooper chase, and then Dead Reckoning Part 1, which I don't know if this was an homage, but of course, in the most recent Mission Impossible movie, they have a Mini Cooper chase. It's comical and fun. It's one of my favorite parts of that movie, but it feels like an ode to Bourne, to me. Also, something to note, 2 underground Euro club songs were made iconic and kind of global from this movie. Ready, Steady, Go, which is during the Mini Cooper chase, and then Extreme Ways by Moby, which we will hear throughout the franchise. And it exposed me to Moby, and is one of the best needle drops, I think, in movie history. I don't know. It gets better. Like, I rewatching this, I was like, oh, yeah, it's not like a dramatic needle drop, but Supremacy has probably the best one. So, but it's kind of a sound that's iconic with this franchise. Okay, I have one more overall thought for you, Mike. And maybe we can follow this.
Okay.
Jason Bourne loses his memory. He is almost like, and we'll find out later, he is an agent that is like super black ops. He's not in the books, super intense. Like, he's in the field, pretty much an assassin for hire. He has this moment where he's trying to assassinate this leader, and he hesitates because this leader is with his family.
Yep.
And then he gets shot, and then he has amnesia, and he's trying to figure this out. Was Jason a good dude? Was he a good guy in a bad spot? Because think about if you're in that situation, if you're like, essentially his mind is reset. But we as an audience see him making moral choices. He's obviously killing guys that are trying to kill him, but his relationship with Marie, and especially him trying to protect Marie's stepbrother's kids, kind of that. I don't know. It just was like Jason, a really good guy. He just got caught up in this like military operation that like, I don't know. It's just something that I rewatching it stood out to me, is like this moral conundrum that he has of like wanting to get out.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a tension here, because I think the decision that Jason ended up making was that he understood his mission, which was to kill Wombosi, and recognized that the mission wasn't just to kill Wombosi, but was to make it so that only one outcome was possible, and that was that
Right.
He was killed by, it was an inside job. And he recognized that in order for that to be a reality in that situation, not only was he have to kill Wombosi, he'd have to kill these 3 children or multiple children.
Oh,
and so I think what he reckoned with is he maybe felt like his job was justifiable up until that moment, because the people he was tasked to kill had done something to deserve to be killed. Whereas these kids didn't deserve to be killed. They didn't do anything. They're just with their dad. And so he made a decision that he was unwilling to kill these children, because the only way for him to complete his mission would be to kill them.
I never thought of that. I mean, I've seen this movie forever. I never thought of that, because he was trying to make it an inside job. He would have to have killed the kids. It would have been a full annihilation of that family, and a kind of a revenge. Wow. So it's really interesting to think like Jason was changing in that moment, and then he had a reset because of his amnesia. But he was already changing.
I feel like, I don't know. I mean, we're assuming facts, not evidence here, but the decision I made, or the interpretation I made, was that he may have had, like, let's say, for instance, you go home for Thanksgiving and you're talking to, your family and they're criticizing you for the job that you do, and you're like, well, these people deserve it. These people made decisions that put them in
Right.
this position. I'm just doing my job. I'm just holding them
Yes.
accountable. And so like so Jason's mental gymnastics that he did up to that point would have been, sure, I don't love killing people. However, I'm making the world a better place. These people did something to deserve to be killed. But then obviously he can't make that agreement to for the kids. He can't reach that for the kids.
It's fascinating. Let's continue to follow that, because I think Jason's morality post amnesia versus before, we don't get a ton of before in this franchise. Obviously in this first movie, we'll get more as we go on, but I think it's something I want to track, because to me, that's like kind of the moral center of it. I think that's a really interesting conversation. Obviously, this is a cool action movie, but I think that's why you can go deeper into this franchise because of that character development and his journey, rediscovering himself and finding out who he is, and maybe not liking who he was, and trying to figure out who he could be. All right, Mike, that is the end of OTs. On to our newest new segment. I'm calling it Leasties and Besties. We're going to go through some of the least important parts of the movie and the best parts of the movie, more of an award superlative section, to give you a little bit more framing on our thoughts on the movies. These will be changing slightly based on the movie, based on the franchise. We're going to have some fun. Okay, Mike, first up, we're going to start with the Leasties. Always start off with the bad news. Who is the least competent government employee?
Oh gosh, I don't even remember. There's so
It's got to be Conklin. I think Conklin is the answer. Now we can throw up a bunch, but I want us to really answer one as a team here. Like
Okay.
we want to. There's one definitive. Like we can bring up different ones and argue, but I want us to both decide
I'd have
on
to
one.
agree. It was definitely Conklin, Chris Cooper's character.
Chris Cooper's character, he is not funding and supporting Nicky in Paris. One of my favorite lines in the movie is that I didn't caught until this is she says, "I'm not staffed for this."
Yes, such a good line.
Audrey brought it up. It's like
it's the best line.
It's so good. She's like, "Why is this guy flying to Paris and helping her? She has no one to help her shred the papers and like delete the files. It's just her." Like, she's going to give the assets orders. Like,
Here's why I love your wife, because your partner, because because I know for a fact when I heard that line in the movie, I was like, this is the line Audrey's going to latch onto.
She caught it so well. It was like, she's like, poor Julia Stiles here is in Paris, like in this really crappy situation, having to deal with all these guys and like clean up this mess. It's just understaffed. So Chris Cooper not staffing his people. Obviously, he's trying to clean up stuff. His biggest error, he's trying to frame Bourne as someone who went rogue and killed Wombosi, which is a big mistake. He's not owning up to it. He's trying to cover up. They try to trick Wombosi as well with that dead body to try to say, "Oh, this is the guy that tried to assassinate you. He's dead." Absolute mess. He also goes after his boss, Abbott, played by the great Brian Cox. He says, "Let me see, get this line right." I don't know if you caught this line. Where did I put it? Oh. He says before he goes to Paris, "Why don't you just book a conference room and talk them to death?" So insubordinate to his boss, just kind of like, "Hey, why don't you just like talk to the Congress and just do whatever?" It definitely bites him in the butt in the end, because he gets double crossed by his boss. So I think worst government employee or least competent government employee goes to Conklin without a doubt. There's a few of them. Zorn, the guy who has the shaved head as well. He's kind of just an order taker, no loyalty there. So I would throw him out there as not good. I can't give Nicky any shade because
she's not staffed for this.
She's not staffed for this. All right. What is the least spy move? I'm not staffed for this.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is the number one. This is one of the biggest issues I have with this movie.
Okay, least spy move. So this means like least like actual spy, or like the most like, why would you do that as a spy?
Exactly. So this happens at the stepbrother's house, and Jason is chasing the professor, the assassin that's sent to kill them, and he can't see him in this field of dead corn. So he shoots his gun into the air and then takes off running. Why would you do that? You're just giving away your position. You can't like immediately when the professor hears that gunshot, he should be looking right to
But he
where...
was distracted by the birds, the doves.
No.
The doves are back, baby.
No.
Where's that call? Mission Impossible 2. The doves are a distraction. They are an ally of our heroes.
Oh my gosh. That was the number one thing I saw, and I was like, that is the dumbest spy thing you could have done.
It's interesting because I said when we were rewatching it, the same thing happens is when he's running, he explodes the tank. Bourne runs, and then the professor tries to like shoot him from a far range through trees. But I told Audrey, I was like, that was dumb because he gave away his position.
He gave away his position, exactly.
So
I agree.
the same thing happened, but he didn't have doves helping them. You know,
One of
that's
these
the key.
guys
If you
keep
are a
dying.
spy, you need doves to help you because they are your ally. We learned it in Mission Impossible 2. We were learning it in the Bourne Identity.
That's right.
I think I'm gonna argue against the least spy move. And this again, Audrey, I gotta give her credit. When they cut Marie's hair and dye it, she was a light brunette with a purple streak, and she went to a shorter brunette with brown hair. So not very different at all. Didn't go blonde, didn't go red. They
Look,
just
Luke,
like
the
darker
guys
brunette.
who were watching the movie, it was a different look.
Yeah, just darker brunette. I have to say, I think that's the worst spy move because they didn't even go with the different color. So I'm gonna overrule you because it's clearly not helping that much. It did not help that much. All right. Least aging things. These are things in the movie that have not aged well. Okay. I will throw Maria's haircut in there as well. That's very of the time. I'm gonna throw out hand scanners. This was a trope in movies where you put your whole hand on a LED like screen and it scanned it. Not necessary. You can do a thumb. The hand scanner kind of took it out for me. It felt like a Mission Impossible movie when he's at the bank and doing the hand scan. What other things, like the least aging things that did not age well?
I mean, the cell phones.
Yeah, but I
cell
like them.
phones that
I
they
like them.
had.
See, here's the deal. I have a weird issue where I can watch a movie where the cell phones are pre-smartphone and be fine. Like if it's a BlackBerry, if it's a just like a flip phone, I'm fine. But as soon as we get into like early iPhone era, it kind of takes me out of it.
Yeah,
So
I mean, it wasn't an issue for me necessarily because I understood it was about a period of time, right?
Yeah.
But
most of the aging stuff in this movie, actually, I think it helps it. So I'm going to go hand scanner because it was the one time where it felt like I was watching Die Another Day.
Yep.
All right. Least important character
You go
of
first.
the movie. I'm going to say Walter Goggins as research tech because you got Walter Goggins right there and you barely give him any lines. Come on. And then you could say Nicky, but she's not staffed for it.
Not staff for this. Luke, we need shirts that say not staff for
I'm
this.
not staffed for this. We could sell them to corporate America. That's for sure. Nikki is the voice of corporate America. She's like every like entry level or like, independent worker or like, low level manager is just like, I'm not staffed for this. How can you expect me to do this? Clean up all this mess. Clean up this huge car chase in Paris.
At that point, I thought the movie was a comedy.
Yeah. She's like, really? Is this a joke? Now I have to destroy everything? I just went to an Ivy League school. Like I'm like a recent graduate.
I'm not staffed for this. I also love that that comment pretty much goes completely ignored as well.
Oh,
right?
totally ignore. Of course, that's why Conklin is definitely the least competent government employee because he just does not care.
Right.
I mean, this is definitely not there. He's just like, why are you here? Okay. Shred those papers.
You're not gonna like my answer, but I think
Okay.
the least important character is Marie.
I actually agree. I agree.
All right.
Audrey said that as well. She did not like Marie. She thought she was whining and like didn't need to be there.
I thought that the the one of the most honest parts of the movie was when Jason said that Marie was slowing him down.
Yeah. when he's trying to lie that he essentially killed her.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, she's there for emotion. This is a part of the book that is much better because in the book, Marie's a banking character. She works for a bank. She's Canadian, and she helps Jason get his money out of the bank. So she plays a much more critical role. She's also like an emotional, love interest. But yeah, I agree. I do like the actress. I like that she's in this movie. It makes it feel grounded. It makes it feel European. It doesn't feel like if it was. I think Julia Stiles could have had a lot more in this movie because she's great. But if you had, I'm trying to think of early 2000s actors. If you had Jennifer Lopez playing Marie, I don't think this movie would work. It felt real. It felt grounded. But the character of Marie, yeah, probably the least important. Yep. Jason would have done all the same things. He just wouldn't have had a car.
Yeah. And he could have hot-wired one.
He could have had, yeah, exactly. Least favorite performance.
The actress from Marie.
Yeah.
I forget her name.
It's hard. I don't mind her performance, but when you rewatch it, she is a little naggy and like.
It's just a weak performance.
I think it's more the writing. I think it's just she's a love interest, and they try to kind of make her this vagabond. Kind of, she has nothing. She has nowhere else to go, and I think the acting. She does a good job acting. Her interest in Jason, especially like their chemistry, I think is pretty strong. You can tell that she's intrigued by him. I think all that's great. It's just halfway through the movie, you're like, okay, she should leave.
Right.
Eventually, she does leave with her brother or her stepbrother, but she should have left in Paris when she had the opportunity. So I think that's one of the challenges. In the book is a little bit like that, to be honest. It's like, wow, this woman is really in love with this guy really fast, and I think that's part of the ages the movie a little bit. Okay, and then last of the leasties, least favorite scene. This is a tough one.
This is a tough one. It's hard to identify.
I've got one if you don't have one.
No, I don't have one.
It's very quick. It's you could barely say it's a scene, and I think you could also put it in what's the least aging things is when they talk about the assets, the other Treadstone assets across Europe. They have a montage where it has all those graphics.
Yeah,
where it's like Paris. That was my least favorite part of the movie that I think is aged the worst, where it doesn't feel connected to this Bourne tone at all. It felt very Mission Impossible, which we love. Felt like it just, I don't know.
It felt very MI2.
Yeah, it did feel MI2. That's for sure. And we didn't need it. You could have just shown montages of them with the voiceover. That was the one part I was like, ooh, that does not age well. I get it. It was very of the time to have those like flashy graphics, but did not age well.
Yeah, I think I agree.
Let's go positive and let's go to besties. All right, who is the best government employee? Best, I'm going to say Nicky because she's a classic government employee where she is understaffed, under budget, and is doing her best. She probably got a master's degree and is not being paid. Yeah, she's living in Paris, but she's stuck in this like pretty crappy like upper room.
Yeah,
and she's giving her heart. She's giving it all.
I think when you consider everything that she got done, and the fact that she wasn't staffed for any of it.
So let's break down what she did. She organized the assets, like the professor and the other asset, and gave them their orders. She had to clean up that car wreck. She helped frame the body. To trick Wimbosi. Then she had to like destroy all the files by herself.
Yeah.
essentially, and then had to like be ready when Jason Bourne was attacking.
Yeah.
Audrey
did a
Love,
lot.
Audrey should just be on here, but she, when he's when Cooper's like, "Where's your field kit? Where's your field kit?" And she's like, "It's right there."
Man.
She's like, "This guy is an absolute jerk." Like, she's like, "It's right there where, this bot where you would have it." She's like, "I didn't hide it. It's like it's right there. Use your eyes. Use your visual scanning." It's so yeah, we got to give it to Nicky. Best government employee, most effective bureaucrat, I would say is, or best bureaucrat. It has to go to Abbott, played by Brian Cox. I mean,
that guy knows his way through a budget meeting.
Oh, baby. He knows to cover it up. I do love that last scene when he's at the hearing, which is like you can tell like he's trying to intentionally bore everybody. And he's just like, Treadstone was just like a research project. It was, way too expensive. Not really important. We've been in meetings like this where you have a seasoned veteran of a corporation or organization that just knows how to play the room like a fiddle.
Oh, yeah.
And is telling them exactly what they want to hear. Oh, they tried something, but it was too expensive, so we decided not to go with it. Just brilliant craftsmanship of bureaucracy. Okay, best sweater. This movie is full of sweaters. What's your favorite sweater?
The only one I can think of is Bourne's sweater that he walks off the boat with.
Yeah, which Audrey was like sexy immediately. She really was into his sweater with the wet puffer jacket. I was like, oh yeah, I guess whatever. I mean, it's probably on trend right now.
Yeah,
to have like the fisherman sweater and puffer jacket soaked with seawater. Go ahead.
I was gonna say there was I don't know if you caught this, and I think this is an error, but in the back of his sweater, there are 2 holes that kind of line up with the bullet holes on his back.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
Was he wearing that sweater when he was in the water?
No.
No, because he was in tactical gear.
He was in tactical gear.
Interesting. He wore, I think, 3 or 4 sweaters in this movie. You have to really follow them. I was looking for them. One of my favorites is when they go to the farmhouse, I believe. It's like it's a black sweater. It's a hunting sweater where it has the shoulder pads for shotguns.
Yeah.
Which I believe Bond wears in No Time to Die. And I'm trying to think of if there's another one. But Daniel Craig wears one of those in No Time to Die that I've been coveting for a long time. So that's my best sweater. But I think you got to go with that original orange sweater because he wears it at the embassy, and it's kind of like the icon of this movie. It's on the cover.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cozy movie, man. It's a cozy. You just want to put on a sweater and just go on the couch.
Yeah.
Okay, best aging things. So this is the inverse. What are some of the best aging things?
I think the stunt climbing down the consulate or whatever.
Yeah. I agree. That whole scene I think is aged so well. I would say from a actor standpoint, Brian Cox and Walter Goggins. I mean, Brian Cox was having a run there because I believe X2 came out the same year where he plays Riker.
Okay.
But obviously, Succession has elevated him to more of everybody knows him, not just like genre fans. So I think Brian Cox definitely is aged continually well. He kind of looks exactly the same. He actually looks better now. I think he's lost a little bit of weight, so he's just aging like a fine wine. And then Walter Goggins also aging like a fine wine.
Yeah.
In a ton of stuff. He's in the new Amazon series Fallout as well. He's the lead in that. So both have aged well. But yeah, I would say that the whole embassy scene, it just gets you going, especially because that's one of the first time he kind of understands his powers. One of my favorite moments of that scene is when he grabs the fire exit map and starts studying it. And he gets into the Bourne zone, which I think is I don't know if it's, maybe the Bond movies were like this, but there's a zone that he gets in that I think Damon does a good job acting, where you can see him go from like confused, I don't know what's going on, to he's locked in. He's
Yes.
like just it's all instinct. And I think he does a good job acting where it changes. And when he grabs that fire escape thing, is just looking at it and he knows where he's going. I love that. And you'll see that in a lot of action movies afterwards. You'll see that actually Daniel Craig's Bond is very similar. Kind of that stoic, almost like looks like a wrestler or a boxer or MMA fighter and is just ready to rage, ready to go. All right, best line. A lot of good lines in this movie. I'm going to throw a couple out. We've already said that I'm not staffed for this.
Yep.
That's
got to be
that's
my
probably
top.
that's like an 8th seed in the NCAA tournament. Like it's like you never know. Like they could make a run.
I think it's a 1 seed.
But now when you watch the movie for the first time, the big ones like in the trailer, like I don't know who I am.
Oh.
That like those kind of things. Like, those are the big ones. I really like when he says that's not going to happen. When Marie starts, she's like freaking out because she realized she brought this to her stepbrother and the kids are there, and Bourne just says that's not going to happen. Like he just cuts her off. Like don't even like she doesn't even finish her sentence. Obviously, Clive Owen gives the line, which we didn't talk about. Clive Owen, another great character actor that's about to just grow from this movie. Just does a ton of stuff after this. Inside Job is probably where he's at his peak of his powers, but look at what they make you give. Will come back in this franchise as well. I think it's a great line.
There's a line, one of the last lines of the movie, ish. Bourne, I don't even know if this is a good line. This might be a bad line. But Bourne says, I don't want to do this anymore.
Oh, I love that one.
I felt like that was like a really poor summation of what happened.
But it's just so honest and stripped down. It's a really indication of this whole movie where he really is so still confused, and he's just like, whatever this is, I don't want to do. And I think, I think on the page it probably reads like, okay, that seems lazy, like a placeholder. But I think that's one of his best deliveries as an actor, and it's just like, I don't want to do this anymore. That's a good one. I like that one. Another one is when they are doing the Mini Cooper chase, and Bourne says, "There's a bump coming up. We might have a bump coming up," and they go down like this huge stairwell. That's one of my favorite ones. That's always stayed with me. So that's one that my brother and I will say to each other, when we're driving the car. Looks like there's a bump coming up, and then book a conference room and talk to them to death. And then we gotta say, here we go. This is my Conklin impression. You're U.S. government property. You're a malfunctioning $30 million weapon. You're a total goddamn catastrophe. And by God, if it kills me, you're going to tell me how this happened. Oh. He has so many good lines in this movie, but like the end, he just, he has like that monologue is so great.
I think for me though, it all comes back to I'm not staffed for this.
I'm not staffed for this because that's what this movie is about. That's what this movie is about. I'm not staffed for this. That is so good. Okay, best performance of the movie.
I mean, nothing really stands out a ton. I liked Chris Cooper in it.
Yeah.
Even though his character is quite deplorable, I thought maybe his performance was among the best.
I do too. He you know exactly what he's about. He doesn't have a ton of screen time, but he delivers all the things you need to, which I think is tough in these type of movies. It's easy to get into long lines and trying to government oversight and government speak and all that stuff that kind of can weigh down a movie. And he just nails it. I would say him and Abbott, Brian Cox, those two together, I think, are the best. I think they're tied for the best performances.
Yeah.
Because they can really allow us to kind of see that tension between what Bourne's fighting against from afar. Okay, best scene. There's so many good ones. We've talked about them already. You have the escape from the embassy, the apartment pen fight, the mini chase, the country house battle, the safe house fight at the end. You have the diner scene, which I think is really good, where Jason's kind of explaining, hey, I can tell you where the best place to find a gun. I can tell you how much that guy's weigh. I can tell you that if I run for a mile in this weather, I'm in altitude, I'm going to, freeze to death. For you, what stands out as like the scene that is the best?
I really do like that scene in the diner or in the restaurant when he's frustrated that he knows all this stuff and doesn't understand why. It's almost like his instincts are kicking in, his training is kicking in, but he doesn't understand it. And I think it helps us as the viewer understand that even though he has amnesia, all these things that he does are instinctual.
Right.
And so that kind of like grounds us a little bit, because I think it's reasonable for the audience to think, you have amnesia, how would you even remember how to do this stuff? But really, he's a weapon. He's a trained weapon. All of this is instinctual.
Yeah. It's tough. It's I agree. I think that's the best acted and written scene. For me, the mini chase is one of my favorites. It stands out with Ready Steady Go. It hits every time. I love the country house fight too, and the pen fight, but the mini chase stands. So mini chase. Let's do mini chase action and in the restaurant scene as verbal stuff, and then best shot, best like frame of the movie. A couple that stand out to me. We have the snow shot. We have where he's standing there in the snow before he gets harassed by the cops. We have the opening shot of the body in the water. We have another one that we didn't talk about is when he has the single scope and he's looking down over the Pump Noof when Conklin is there, which is another great scene where he tricks Conklin into showing who he is.
Yeah.
Which we'll see in the sequels for sure, but definitely the shot of him looking into the scope, the single scope, that's kind of a theme and shot of the movie that we'll see. And then I do really like the shot of the propane tank, even though that's not realistic.
Yeah.
The way it's framed where you just see him turn and shoot, because we don't really know what he's doing. And then the explosion happens in frame. You can see that whole thing. All those shots stand out to me. What about you?
Yeah, I don't have a favorite. I mean, I don't know if it's a good shot, but a good moment is when he uses the henchman's body to fall down.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And shoot, and one shot the guy in one of the final scenes. I think a great shot too is that the deception that the director uses to get you to think that Bourne is going to be assassinated at the
right at the end. Yeah, when they're both walking and limping.
Yep, ends up being Conklin.
Yeah, those are both really good ones.
So
a lot of good ones in this movie. I don't know if we could pick a best, man. That's hard for me. I mean, the water shot is so important because we'll see that as like a theme later on.
Yeah.
Ooh, I think you nailed it with the final action sequence when Jason uses the body as a kite and does the headshot, because it's a shot of the film and then also a headshot, so it's a double shot. All right, let's move on to rating this movie. Okay, I had an idea of what we could do. We usually do best out of 5, and we usually do a themed 5 instead of stars. Who likes stars? We like to pick a object or theme from the movie. We've done claw marks. We've done masks for Mission Impossible. We did Jolly Rogers for Pirates. What are we going to do for Bourne? I have one in mind, but are there any that come to you?
Passports.
I do like passports. A lot of passports in this franchise. Another one I had is Treadstones as a play on Treadstone. Out of 5 Treadstones.
5 Treadstones. That's good. I don't know. I mean, I'm fine with Treadstones.
Okay. Out of 5 Treadstones. Out of 5 Treadstones, what do you give this movie?
Are we doing half stones?
You can do half stones.
Can I give it like I'm stuck between like a 3.5 and a 4. Cause I don't know, man. I'm not in love with it.
Yeah. 3.5 is fine.
Three and a half. I'm going 3.5.
All right. I'm gonna give 4 out of 5 treadstones because I think I'm gonna need some wiggle room.
Ooh.
I was gonna go 4.5, but I think I'm gonna do 4. It's a clean movie. It's a simple movie. It feels. Rewatching this, I was like, oh yeah, the formula for this franchise really is starting. It isn't what I think a lot of people think about with Bourne. It's starting it, but it's not full on. I think Supremacy. I haven't seen Supremacy in a long time. Supremacy, I think, might be the best of the franchise.
Really?
I think it turns up the needle, and I think you have Brian Cox, and then the actress that plays, she's basically the new Conklin. She's in it, and that actress is fantastic. Nicky's in it a little bit more. And spoiler alert, we might see less. I'm not gonna say that. Because maybe no one has watched these movies, but there's some more stuff that happens, and I think it's really good. Plus, we have a really good asset in the sequel that comes through, and I love the actor. So 4 to 5 treadstones. Okay, again, if you want to connect with the show, least important things.com, Instagram at Luke H. Ferris, TikTok, least important things, all those things. Let us know. Let us know if you like our new format with our new segments. Should we add a new segment? Should we add a bestie or a leastie for the next movie? Reach out to us. Let us know. And Mike, we'll be back.
Peace out.
Bournecast with Bourne Supremacy.